Alright guys, Subscribe here back again today. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday so far, whatever day you happen to be watching this video, and today we're going to talk about the substitutes for the CDL 2021. Yesterday, Toronto Ultra confirmed that Insight, formerly of Team Singularity, is going to be joining them as their substitute for this coming season, in addition to their 5-man squad from last season, minus Classic, now with Insight on the substitute bench. Interesting decision given what role Insight has typically played throughout his career, and also of course moving away from that design philosophy that they had last season, of having the 5-man starting team and then also the 5-man backup team on the substitute bench. They're not going with that anymore. Am I surprised? Not one bit. We'll talk about this in the coming minutes. Like, if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new. As always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for doing that. This is then what Team Singularity confirmed yesterday. We're happy to announce Insight God has been successfully transferred to one of the CDL franchises last week. And just a couple of hours later, Toronto Ultra confirmed that it was them in question indeed. So England superhero has arrived. Welcome Insight to the Ultra fan pending league approval, all that good stuff. So pretty cool to see. Interesting the fact that well, he's played with Kleenex in the past, for example. He was once again a revelation when he joined that starting lineup earlier this season. They definitely flip-flopped a lot, did Toronto Ultra, with their roster last season, and we now get to a point where they have a pretty solidified 4. We got Methods on the team, Cammy of course, who is fantastic. So Methods as the main AR, Cammy is like I suppose the second AR or the flex. Then you've got Bance, then you've got Kleenex on the squad as it stands right now. So honestly, a pretty heavy European team, right? And now bringing Insight in as well. I mean, you know, where's the Canadian representation? You could certainly argue in a similar way to people are probably arguing with the Paris Legion right now as to exactly the decisions they are making. But well, Insight joins the Toronto Ultra. Interesting decision because frankly, throughout the majority of this guy's career, to my understanding, and certainly when he's been on Singularity, he's been mainly a main assault rifle on their team. He's been, you know, one of the slower ARs, very solid with the M4, very solid with the ICR throughout Black Ops 4, for example, and with the sniper in hand, as you can see as well right here. So the question is going to be there, if he does find his way into the starting team, who is he potentially going to be replacing, right? So let's look at a couple of other things first. As Insight says, couldn't thank Toronto Ultra enough for the opportunity, reunited with the duo Kleenex, but now it is time to get to work. We'll have a look at some of his results in a second, but you guys may know that Toronto Ultra team last season had a lot of bench players. Like we had Lucky, we had Metals on the team, who was on the team at the start and then he moved to the bench. We had Mayhem on the team, we had Brack on the team, Looney of course went to the bench as well, and a lot of those guys, especially Mayhem, Brack and Lucky for example, never got their opportunity in the starting lineup, right? And those guys were effectively just sitting on that team for the entire season, not doing anything. And this season, of course, now they have, well, only probably one substitute on this team, only an Insight, compared to last season where they had way more players on the bench. But Insight, I imagine, probably has more opportunity to get in the starting lineup this season. But, you know, at the same time, those guys last season did not have the greatest run. I'm sure Insight is not expecting, or not hoping at least, that he's stuck on the bench the entire season long, as well as some of those guys did. I mean, you look at the likes of Brack, for example, he's not going to get onto a professional team next season despite having a great Black Ops 4 because of the fact, I mean, maybe he gets on as a substitute somewhere or something to that effect, but the fact that he wasn't able to play because he was like stuck on the bench, you know, it lowers your stock, right? And well, Insight is certainly hoping that at some point he's going to be able to get his spot in the starting lineup. We'll have a look at some of his results here in just a second. So from when he joined Singularity in early 2019, played with this team for a fair long time. We had Genesis on the team, Kezu on the team, Disarray. They played through a few online tournaments, and well, you guys may well know at the World Championship in the Amateur Finals, they had a pretty good result. At the time, it was Detain, Insight, Bids, Keza, and Kleenex. Kleenex, of course, had that incredible, like, you know, 4-piece, 6-piece, whatever streak it was against Team Envy at the World Championship. That was very memorable for him, and as a result of that, he then got picked up onto the Toronto Ultra. And who knows whether he's had a word with the management to be like, look, this Insight guy, I really rate him. We should get him on as our substitute player. But, you know, typically on this team, as we've been talking about, Insight has been the main assault rifle on the squad, and I've discussed a couple of times on this channel how I don't really think a main assault rifle as your substitute is necessarily the way to go, because it means you're much less flexible in terms of the players that you could potentially substitute out. But maybe they have some reasons for doing this, and as you can see through Modern Warfare, Team Singularity, early on it was Detain, Insight, Bids, Maple, and Chain. Then they swapped out a Chain for Gizmo, I think halfway through the year, and then they brought Chain back in for Maple towards the end. However, Chain recently announced as well, free agent for Cold War, not being restricted in any way by Singularity Gaming. So they're clearly looking to move in different directions, and where will Chain go? That is also a big question mark as well, given that if Insight's getting a sub spot, maybe Chain is just around the corner. A lot of great talent in the European region, there is no doubt about that. So this is the player roster right now that we have over at the Toronto Ultra. Insight on the bench, and this is really where the questions start to arise, because if Insight's typically been a main assault rifle as he has, if someone starts to underperform on this team, let's say Bance, Cameo, Clinic starts to underperform, who do you bring in instead of them, right? You can't really bring in Insight, in my opinion, and expect him to be able to run a fast aggressive SMG player, or, you know, as a fast aggressive SMG player, if that's what you need on the team at the time. So that really is the stumbling block for this team, right? Because if I was MattG right now, I'd be somewhat concerned that at some point in the year, Insight's going to be able to take my spot. He's an English player and the only player on this team of 4 right now that isn't from Europe. I mean, Bant's from England, Cammy from Scotland, Clinics from Denmark, is MattG from North America, right, from the USA. So, well, I certainly would have questions if I was in MattG's mind right now. Like, look, if I'm underperforming, Insight's probably going to step in for me, because Clinics certainly will vouch for Insight, and I'm sure Clinics would be pretty happy to play with Insight in the starting team and rate him as pretty good. Cammy was obviously fantastic this last season, as was Clinics, and Bant was a very serviceable player. The problem is, I suppose, that when this initial team of 4 was announced, most people's questions were around Bant, right? Like, is he the right fit for this team? Can he still be consistent enough that they need? And if Bant starts to underperform, can Insight step into that role? Probably not, right? Like, you would imagine that you would need a different substitute to actually be able to fit into more of those SMG, more aggressive roles. Who really knows? Maybe Insight can be quite happy playing a flex or playing an SMG if necessary, or maybe Cammy would move to a second SMG alongside Clinics, and then Insight would slot into kind of a flex role. Really does depend on how the meta plays out this year, but big questions to me as to whether Insight is the right move for this team as a substitute player, and will he even get his spot in the starting team, given that MattG has been a pretty solid AR these last few seasons, and it wouldn't be a surprise to me to just see MattG continuing in this team going forwards, especially given the fact that MattG is probably the biggest brand and the biggest name on this team. So, you know, we may have a situation where Insight just sits on the sub bench the entire season, but I can't imagine this team is going to be winning championships too often, and maybe that does mean that, well, Toronto Ultra decides to make some change at some point in the year. Very intrigued to hear your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. The rest of the discussion then has to come around the other substitutes that could potentially picked up. As we've been saying, I tend to favour substitute players that can play a number of different roles, especially, like, you know, fill in multiple SMG roles rather than just one assault rifle role on the team, for example. Thought this was interesting as well. Josiah Berry, that being slacked just yesterday, retweeted this tweet from back in 2018, which is Saints Nato's overall career, so tournaments won, LAN wins, etc. Longest teammate was slacked for 14 events on the Luminosity Gaming team, especially throughout Infinite Warfare, right? So definitely the question is there, is Slacked going to get on a team? Is Saints going to get on a team? Because Slacked is a guy who, what he brings to a team is very highly rated by a number of professional players, and Looney was talking about it on the Bricecast, that, you know, he's surprised, frankly, that Slacked wasn't being picked up by, immediately by some of these franchises as soon as Seattle decided not to move in that direction. He's clearly keen to get somewhere, but once again, if you are a player like Slacked, do you decide to sit on the bench for the entire season and potentially not get a starting roster spot, or do you say, okay, we're going to fight through challenges, at least, at least maintain some degree of stock going into next season to get picked up elsewhere? And retweeting this from Saints, does that mean they're going to team in the challenger side? What could this potentially mean? Are these two guys good enough to get a substitute spot? Of course they certainly are, but do they even want a sub spot, right? Because I imagine that pro players are probably more willing to actually not take a sub spot and go in the challengers route, rather than, well, amateur players who need to, let's say, prove to their parents or whatever that they can actually make a living out of this, much more likely to take that 50k guaranteed from the professional team, and then, prove that it can work and try and make their way into a starting lineup, even if long term that might not be the best move for their stock, but probably the best move for them individually. Whereas pros, with a lot of money in the bank already, probably don't have to worry about that too much and can focus on actually trying to play the best Call of Duty they can to get picked up when it does go to 16 or even more teams in 2022. So Slack definitely could be an option. I wonder where you guys think he should fit in. He replies to this tweet as well to Insight saying, congrats bro, you are nasty. And we get Tish as well, who was a substitute player over at the Dallas Empire this past season along with Tommy. He says, as of right now, I'm a free agent for the 2021 season, contact me, etc. Retweets appreciated and all that kind of good stuff. And this then is the list of participants for the CDL 2020 season, which, as you can see right here, a lot of these names right now are not on the starting lineup. Which of these should be getting the substitute spots? Now, we don't know what's going on with the Paris Legion quite yet. We don't know exactly what's going on with the Florida Mutineers, although we're pretty sure that it's just going to be these 4 players minus Frosty, because he's now going back to Halo, but he's also going to play in the Challenger side because he didn't get an offer from a Call of Duty League franchise. We don't know 100% what London's going to be doing, but it could well be Dylan, Shawnee, Zero plus Alex, and Waskin and Scraps. Nobody really knows, but well, Waskin once again hinting that he's not necessarily going to be on the Paris Legion next season either. So big question marks in the air. We've got Saint as well being talked about with Slacked right here. Is he going to get anywhere? Most of these Los Angeles Guerrillas guys have been completely cut out. So if you're a Pro League team right now, not many of them have confirmed a substitute player, and I imagine a lot of them may not do for quite a while, right? They may wait for a few months into the season, like November, December, try and see what's going on in the online challenger tournaments, then decide to snap someone up, because I don't necessarily believe there's a hard deadline for when these teams all have to be finalized, and I imagine a lot of teams are pretty happy to just see who looks best through the challenger side and maybe like talk to their team when the game comes out and decides if they do want to pick up like a former pro or something onto their bench. And also by waiting a couple of months, you then no longer have to pay them that salary for the next couple of months either. So that's also a consideration for some of these organizations that are kind of struggling for cash given the pandemic that's happened over, well, the incredible year that has been 2020. Intrigued to hear your thoughts down below on who exactly you think should get the next substitute spot in the league. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for making it this far. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well. Thank you for watching as always, and I will see you next time.